We're here at the Tea Party event on April 15th in Stevensville, Maryland, and we're talking to people about how to reform government. Can I ask you, what are your ideas on what's the best way to reform government?
Well, get rid of the Congress and get rid of the Senate. Vote them out in November. To me, that's the way to reform it.
You know, most of the states that have passed term limits, for instance, have done it through the voter initiative process.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but is that something that is needed here in Maryland or needed otherwise?
Yes, because the Democrats have had too much control for too many years.
We're talking about government reform, how to reform government, what kind of reforms are needed. What's your thoughts on government reform?
Well, the biggest thing for me is that the government's too big. It's way too much spending and so forth, and there's a lot of people in government that are very entrenched. The whole idea of the having term limits was very appealing to me. Maybe that's the way we ought to go. I'm not really sure about that, but I'm not sure how to get people not to be so entrenched, but that seems to be the big thing to me.
It's a good point. My group, Citizens in Charge, we work on initiative referendum, but before I worked for initiative referendum, I worked on term limits. And of course, you almost can't get term limits except through the initiative because politicians won't do it. How important to you is it to have a process where citizens could petition to put issues directly on the ballot?
You know, I hadn't thought a lot about it until actually I've seen some of the petitioning around here, and it is, again, that's a very appealing, maybe that's the route we ought to go. I believe that the more freedoms we have, the more our freedoms keep on being taken away, so if the people have more of a direct vote in it, they'll probably vote to keep more of our freedoms.
We work with people around the country on initiative and referendum.
Okay.
Where people can petition to put an issue on the ballot. It could be any issue. Is that something that you find useful, that you support, that you don't support?
I'd support any grassroots effort on getting localized government to have more say in what is happening within our budget, referendums and whatnot.
Super. Something we see around the country, you have a process lots of places, but they try to take it away. And one of the dilemmas is the public supports certain things, but they have a hard time putting it into practice because sometimes people in office don't support those things for personal reasons.
Yeah.
Is that, in terms of getting reforms around the country, Congress sometimes is tough, but
I think that's a strategy that's worth going to because it's a place where we can work locally with other people in our own communities versus relying on politicians who might not listen to us in the first place when clearly we have a strong opposition as a movement.
The more government we have, the less freedom you have. The government cannot give you anything without taking it from somebody else first. Freedom is not free. We have to fight for it. And the less government we have, the more freedom we have. The more government we have, the more tyranny we had. We escaped from this. We put our lives at stake signing the Declaration of Independence, so this would no longer happen.